Just a recap, I think we had a week break last week. So just to recap, the third chapter starts with Krishna asking the questions of confused state as what he has to follow because he has got confused with what Krishna was teaching. Krishna initially told about the Buddhi Yoga, or he told about the Sankhya Yoga being the highest philosophy. And again, he now asks him to go and fight. So he says, I'm very confused with your teachings because they are contradicting or conflicting. So you tell me just one thing that I have to follow. To answer that questions, Krishna starts answering, saying him that there is no a single fold path. So he has to follow the twofold path, which is the path of knowledge as well as the path of action, because he has to gain knowledge and apply the thinking through the path of jnana and then perform action through the path of karma. So you need twofold path. That's why he said lokesmin vivida nishta pura prokta mayanaga. So he gets jnana yogena sankhyanam, karma yogena yoginam. So you become yogi by doing the karma yoga, and you get that discriminative or analytical capability by performing the jnana yoga. We all, being the people of action, we have to take the help of jnana yoga to become more analytical. Whereas the people of contemplative are totally different. They follow the path of just jnana yoga. Telling that, he tells few verses about why action is the insignia of life. Here, action doesn't merely translate to the physical action, but even the thought is an action. So we cannot stop our thoughts, we cannot stop breathing. So action is the insignia of life. If we are alive, action is inevitable. So in such cases, how should we act, and what type of actions, or how is the bondage created? We saw that the state of perfection is not by abstaining from action, or not by renunciating it is a renunciation of the action. So what should we do? We have to act in such a way that we exhaust all the desires of that action, or we do not produce any unwanted desires as a part of execution of a particular action. If we do that intelligently using our intellect, then we will not pile up more desires and desires, which will go back and create vasanas. Because the chronology is vasanas produces thoughts, thoughts produces desires, and desire makes us or compel us to act. So with every action, we have to reach the stage of actionlessness, which means that we have not added any new desires, that leads to the state of desirelessness, which takes back to the state of thoughtlessness, and which takes us back to the state of vasanalessness. When all our vasanas are exhausted, it is the state of self-realization where we will be able to realize ourselves. So it is only through action that we can achieve the state of perfection, not by abstaining from action. So this was a very important point to understand for all the followers, or all the people who are in the Arjuna state, the people who are acting in this materialistic world, that refraining from actions, abstaining from actions, or escaping from actions will not take us to the state of perfection. So we have to act, and how to act in the theory of Karma Yoga, or in the spirit of Karma Yoga. He further explains that the Yajna concept. He tells that Yajna is the spirit of service and sacrifice, which is given to each and every individual, or the creator has given that to each and every individual. And because of that Yajna, he has told us to use that as a milch cow to get all our desired objects. So every one of us have that capacity of doing the Yajna, but we are not using it. So when we are born, we cry, or we do certain things as a baby immediately when we are born. Who has given that function? That function comes to us through the universe. Once you have that function, we enhance that function day by day, from the day or from the moment we are born in this universe. So the initial function has been given by the universe to us. Whomever we think of as God or whatever it is, it's not there within us from the start. Like, we did not create that function. It was given to us by the universe, and that function has been enhanced. That's what he meant by saying that Yajnasishta Mritambujaha the thing that he's told about the Prajapati, this one, Sahayagnya Praja Srishtva Purovacha Prajapati. So the creator has created the mankind with this Yajna, which is an ability to function with the capacity to serve and sacrifice. So we have to use this to achieve what we want to achieve in our life. And we also saw that if you do not control our desires, they multiply, they create restlessness. And anyway, whatever we do, the results is going to be what we deserve. Again, the karma philosophy comes into picture. It again depends upon what we deserve rather than what we desire. And after this, he brings about the concept of universal wheel of action, which we saw the last class. He says the metaphorical example of agriculture, where from how the Brahma Yajna arises, from Yajna how the rain arises, and how rain gives food and food is being fed to the human beings. In the same chronology or in the same way, we have to take it to the actions, and action is the cause and also the effect. So action is both the fuel and the fire. The reason why we are born is because of our vasanas. And if we have vasanas, we have to act. And when we act in a way materialistically, without doing the action in the spirit of karma yoga, we will keep on adding more desires, and that desires in turn goes and adds up to our vasana bucket, and the cycle continues. But if you understand the reason of action, or when you understand the spirit of karma yoga and try to act, transform every action into a sadhana, or transform every action of yours into a spiritual action, that's when you will be able to break the bondage, and every action will be end in itself, which will help you to transcend your vasanas. So vasanas produce actions. Our vasanas are the cause for you to act, and your actions should be the cause to transcending vasanas. So that is the universal wheel of action that has been illustrated in the verse 50. I think we have seen till here. We will see from verse 16 now. Evam pravartitam chakram nanuvartayati hayah aghayurindriya ramah mogham partha sajivati. He is telling to Arjuna. So I have explained you the cycle or the wheel which is set in motion. He who does not follow this wheel set in motion, living in sin and rejoicing in the senses, he lives in vain, O Partha. So he is like giving a alarming statement, or he is giving a word of caution to Arjuna. So this is the rule. This is the wheel. This is why action is put in place, and also function to transform your action into a spiritual action is also given to you as a human being. If you do not follow this wheel of action, and you end up, when he says that aghayu indriya ramaha, indriyas are our senses. If you get entangled with the world of objects and get yourself in yoga and kshema, in just acquisitions and preservations, and go into the loop of enjoyments without realizing what the truth is, then mogham is vain. So your complete life is in vain. According to spirituality or according to Vedanta, why are we born as human beings? Is to evolve ourselves from where we are. I think generally everyone might be knowing that if you have to get liberated, at least from the mythological points of view, liberation happens only through the human birth. Any other creature in this world cannot get liberated without being born as human, because human only have the intellect, which is the subtle intellect, which can take you above your materialistic world, and which can help us to realize the universal oneness. And that's the reason we have life. So he's saying that the purpose of life is to realize the divinity within you. And if you are not following, and how can we self-realize? We have seen from the wheel of action, you have to perform action and transform your action into spiritual action. then your spiritual action will help you to transcend your vasanas. When you transcend all your vasanas, you will be able to realize the divinity within you. So that is the cycle, universal wheel that the universe has set in motion. If you do not follow this universal wheel of action, Partha, the life is going, he didn't say just to him, he says whoever does not follow this wheel, and without following what the person does, the person gets entangled or enchanted by the senses. He works only towards satisfying his sensory pleasures. In such a case, the life is a vain. And let's see some kind of understanding between an animal and a human being. We all know the evolution that humans came from animals. When you see animals, animals stand on their four legs. Like generally, the animals have four legs. And when you see the structure or the state of the organs placed, head, heart, hunger, and pleasure are all actually in the same straight line, almost the same straight line. Head might be a little bit higher, but still it forms like a kind of straight line. So what does it mean is animals do not have the capacity to think. For them, all these things are equally important, but they follow the law which has been set for animals to follow. That's why whenever an animal is hungry, whenever an animal is emotional, it encounters a fear, it encounters a threat, it exactly does what it is programmed to do. It cannot do something differently from what the programming has been done, because it does not have that ability to choose. But when it comes to human beings, we stand on two legs and our head is at the top. What it signifies is our head is the noble part. It is the part that has to act always in priority. And when we say head can be taken to the intellectual part of the thinking, and heart again is taken as a center of emotion. So physically seeing, both can be in the brain, but to understand, head means our thinking, intellect, heart means our emotions, hunger is our physical needs, and pleasures are the physical pleasures. So we have the chronology and we have the choice to follow the chronology or not to follow the chronology. But the reason why human beings are differentiated from all the species of the universe is just because we have the ability to choose, or we have something called as intellect where we can make our choices. But unfortunately, that is what most of the people do it now in a reverse way, where when we see a lot of incidents that are happening all over the places, people go first for satisfying their physical pleasures, then hunger, then their emotions, and last is what they try to think after everything gets happened, where we have to act the other way around. The programming that has been done, whatever the universe has programmed us to do, it was in different certain way, but he also had given us the choice. You can act in this way or you cannot act in this way. It's not like animals doesn't have choice. We don't know how they would have behaved if they have given their choice, but they don't have their choice, unfortunately. But we have the choice to be like the animals without using our thinking capability, or to be like human beings to always think rationally and act. So he gives here the warning. If you do not follow this cycle, neither you are going to be happy, nor the society is going to get any benefit from you. You would be in vain, you would not evolve, because the purpose of life, the purpose of every human being is to come up the evolutionary cycle to realize the truth or realize the divinity within each one of them. So we get the embodiment and environment that is best suited for our evolution. So why, based upon the karma theory, we have understood that wherever we are placed in, whatever experiences that we are getting are the ones that are best suited for us to evolve. So we should not always take the experiences and think that something bad is happening to us, good or bad, that is happening, something's beyond our control. It is to act. When we go through these spiritual studies, it gives us a kind of acceptance that these situations are giving us some kind of experience or some kind of quality development that we lack, that we have to develop. Suppose I am a very angry person and I get a person who is very calm. So there will be, I shout, but the other person is very calm and quiet. In that case, what happens? My anger goes on and on only to a certain extent, because there is no response on the other side. Only when there is a response, both sides it goes. So after some time, I will realize myself that there is no use of throwing this emotion at this point of time. So everybody in this world that we encounter with, every relationship we have in this world is there to teach us something that we are lacking. So when we take all these experiences as life learning lessons and develop the aspect that we are learning, we will progress slowly in our spiritual ladder. So let's make the best use of the situations and evolve and not to devolve. Every time we become emotional and we become like starting to play the blame games, and every time we start becoming depressed and going to the verge of stress and emotional turbulences, we are again going back to the devolutionary state instead of making ourselves evolved. So this is a small conversation. I will stop the sharing and play it in the other window because I cannot play this from here. So Ramdas is a kind of spiritual teacher from America. He used to teach a lot of spiritual lessons in America. And Milton Friedman is an American economist. There is a Ramdas told a story about a church and a Milton Friedman's conversation. And there is something to catch in this. First, listen to this conversation, then I will discuss as what it means.
Share. I've been learning that stories are such a profound.
You are able to listen?
Yes, Sabita.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
To transmit a teaching, to share a quality of wisdom with other human beings. And I'm not under an illusion that I have either a corner on the market of wisdom or even any special wisdom. I feel you and I are we are being born into wisdom, and we come together to share what we're hearing. So, and figure out how to live our lives out of that place of wisdom. It's like the culture is graduating from knowledge to wisdom. And wisdom has to do with the intuitive heart and the way we receive information. And I've been enjoying using stories as well. And this story, which I've told many times, concerns somebody, and many of you have heard this story, concerns a man named Milton Friedman, whom many of you know. And Milton was a speechwriter in the White House. It's not the Milton Friedman, the economist, but he has a PhD, too. So one day he received a telephone call and it said, "Is this Dr. Milton Friedman?" And he said, "Yes." And the caller said, This is a large church. I'm calling from the board of a large church on the West Coast. And we have a lot of excess funds, and we wonder if you could suggest how we might invest them." So Milton said, "Have you considered giving them to the poor?" To which the caller said, "Is this the real Milton Friedman?" To which Milton Friedman answered, Is this the real church?
So what did you understand or what did you sense from this audio? Was the audio clear?
Yes, it was clear, Sabita.
Yeah. So anyone want to share? What did you understand or what did you sense from this audio between the caller and the Milton Friedman? What happened? No one wants to share, is it, today?
No, we are thinking, actually, I'm thinking what could have been that if you are asking a economist, then he will definitely tell something about the investment ways and how to increase the economy. But when he rang up that another Milton who was a speech writer, then I'm not very clear about this, what to say.
Yeah, the thing is, yeah, Renu.
Sorry. Actually, the expectation, what we set from each person is different. The person who called thought that he will give an advice related to increase his funds or do something which is more which will give some fame or something like that. And this person expected that the church guy will be more noble and he will be willing to donate and do charity. So the expectations from both the sides is different, and the places where they are in, we expect something and the opposite thing has happened. So what we infer from that is, I mean, as per my understanding, it's your heart which is more important. I mean, the one as in I don't know, so many thoughts are going on. He should be using his brain, the person who is an economist, but he used his heart, thinking that we have to do the charity. But the person who is in the church should be more using his heart, be little more good to the poor people doing the charity. But he thought with his brain, which is conflicting.
Yeah, you're closer, but even the thing is, if another person who had called, the answer could be different. If you as a person could have called for investment, that is a different. But being a service organization, and when the service organization looks for investment, it is something that it is deviating from its core values. It has to work on its core values, which is on the service. A church is a service-based organization. They have more funds, they have to use it for the development of the people around the church or whoever are needy. They have to reach the funds to the needy. As a person who is in charge of the church, he cannot think of the options to invest and make more money out of it.
So he has given the right advice because he is in that mode of service that should be used. So his advice is right. But if I call, maybe he would have given a different advice.
He could have or he could not. But the conversation here, when he asks that, when he says that, why don't you consider giving it to the poor? And immediately the church caller who has called him asked, are you Milton Friedman? Then he immediately asked, are you the real church? So it shows that as a real economist, the expectation from the church was actually to show a path of investment. At the same time, for him as a church, they should have not at all reached out for the investment. So it shows that we have the choice. As human beings, we have that capability of choice. We have the capability to serve. We have the capability to sacrifice. At the same time, we have the capability not to do and act selfishly. But Who are you? What are you made for? And what is the capacity? Why you are made for? When you understand that, you will act in a better way. So it's just a snippet that I found quite interesting to just spark something. When we look for things, we can relate to some of the points here. So this is also a quote from Somerset Maugham, who is an English playwright. So he says, more single-mindedly you chase pleasure, soon you find nothing pleasing anymore. This again follows the law of diminishing marginal utility. It could be a person, thing, object, or anything, whichever gives pleasure. The same amount of pleasure you derive the first time, when it comes to second time, third time, fourth time, fifth time, the pleasure decreases because of the nature of the objects. It could be people, anything, but anything that is in the materialistic world except the self. We have seen in the second chapter the nature of the self and the nature of which is permanent and which is not permanent. Anything that is impermanent can never give you a sustainable happiness. What gives us sustainable happiness is only the permanent thing. So based on that, here again that saying comes that when we chase pleasure, soon we find nothing pleasing anymore. The same goes with any of the cycles. If you break any of the cycles, what is going to happen in the nature? If you see the simple water cycle of how the water from the ocean goes back, forming the water vapor, forming the clouds, and again giving water back to the earth. If this cycle is disrupted, there will be a lot of disruptions that happen. In the same way, when the cycle that has been set into motion gets disrupted, when we say what happens to us is mental agitations, we will be subject to a lot of mental agitations. But when we follow that cycle of wheel set in motion, we will not be subject to mental agitations. But when we try to break the cycle, that's when we start getting mental agitations. As how when you take the example of physical cycles that we see from the nature, when some kind of disruption occurs, there will be a lot of effect that we see in the nature in our daily activities, or it could be in regards to how it helps in growing crops. If water is not there, we know what are all the issues that the living beings in this earth will face if the water goes scarce. So giving back, what we are learning from all this thing is the Yajna concept, the spirit of Yajna. Giving back is not only healthy for society, but it also is healthy for our own personality to be healthy. And if you ask how much, how do you define the giving back? Again, I cannot define a specific thing and say this is what defines the giving back, but it is the spirit that you have within you, within your capability and within your capacity. It's not measured in terms of quantity or quality, but it is your pure intention that you resonate with every time. That matters. So it's not measured with the amount of work you give or the amount of charity you do or whatever it is, but with what spirit you are doing that and within what capacity. Because every one of us have our own limitations. Every one of us are having a set of boundaries that is drawn to each one of us at different levels. So confining to your boundaries, confining to what you are, confining to where you are, confining to what you can do, you can still have the feeling of that spirit of sacrifice or that Yajna spirit, that giving back spirit, doing the things in the spirit of that gives a lot of difference in our personality. And there is a certain statements which we call it as counterintuitive. When we say what is counterintuitive, it means that the statement seems to be, it's a logical statement, but it doesn't seem right to your mind when it reads it. So when I say, for example, fasting helps you to cleanse your body, or fasting gives you more energy. That is a statement I put before you. Your mind immediately says, how can it be? When I am hungry, how can I get more energy? Because it doesn't go through the logic. But the statement as such, if you see, no food, more energy, it seems to be a counterintuitive statement. Similarly here, the sharing always seems to be counterintuitive because we don't understand the inner, deeper sense of what is the spirit of sharing. So it takes a lot of maturity to see, feel how it feels. People who have been doing things and feeling happy from within when they serve others can relate to this very easily. The more and more you expand your service nature, starting from your family to the friends to the society, the more and more broader your happiness spectrum becomes. But for the other person who even cannot even think of giving even a single penny out of his pocket to other person, he cannot think. And when you go and say to a person that sharing increases your happiness, it will be a counterintuitive statement to that person, because he does not understand the depths of your saying, because he has never experienced it. So the wise learn quickly while others take them. So everyone have their own time to reflect and experience the things, but the baseline is the quality or the attitude you resonate with. The Yajna attitude with which you resonate gives you a healthy personality. Any questions in this verse? Okay, I'll continue with the next verse. यस्वात्मरतिरेव स्यात् आत्मतृप्तश्च मानवः आत्मन्येव च सन्तुष्टः तस्य कार्यं न विद्यते. Here he is now saying caution. He is now saying, he said, whoever does not follow that wheel of cycle, the wheel set in motion, and who are enjoying their sensual pleasures, are indulged only in their senses, their life is going to be vain. So he is taking the other part. Okay, who is indulged in senses, their life goes in vain. What happens to the person who is not indulging in senses? So he is taking the other side of the person and talking. He's saying, but a man who rejoices in the self, yasmat swarati revasyat. And he's saying, atma truptascha manavaha. Here he gives three words. One is trupti. So where he is getting that satisfaction, trupti, he is getting that satisfaction in the self, atma. And atmanyevacha santushtaha. And he is content. Satisfaction, santushta is contentment. He is getting contentment in his self. And he would have given rati. Rati is delight. Again, yasmat tvarati revasyat. He has given in the first 4 lines. He says rati is also again being satisfied or content or from the physical level. So all the three things, all the three levels, physical, mental, and intellectual, he is taking or rejoicing or getting contented with his self. Such a person, there is nothing that he can be done. We will see what he implies, that that person has nothing to be done. So he talked as Rati, he talked as Tripti, and his daughter Santushtaha. Rati is taking delight. Generally, when we say taking delight, it happens through the senses, the 5 senses that deals with the external world. That's where you get delight. Tripti is your mind. When what you want, likes, mostly satisfaction of the likes, that comes up as Tripti. And Santushta is contentment, where you feel, okay, this is right. That kind of contentment comes on the 3 levels, and he takes refuge for all the 3, not outside, but in himself. So Rati through senses, Trupti of desires, and Santushtaha of contentment of the intellect happens because of his self. So when you ask yourself the questions, when do you feel happy, or what is giving you happiness? Can few of you tell me, like, when do you feel happy and what gives you happiness? You can feel free to share.
Yes, Abhita. when I help someone, or really, it's not that purposefully I'm going and doing something. If I can really be of help to someone who's really in need of anything, maybe some advice or some support, and if that really it's going to help them, really I feel that happiness.
Okay. Anyone else?
Happiness, it's a state of mind, and whatever I like the most and it happens, then I feel happiness. For example, I love to sing songs. So if I old film songs, and if I record them and send it to people, and they say that oh, you have sung it very well, then I feel happy. And what else? I mean, anything which you like and it happens, definitely you feel happy. I mean, I feel happy in that.
Okay.
Yeah, I am also on the same line. Whatever you desire for, you think that after maybe a month or 1 week or this year, we desire that this should happen for our kid or husband or me in our family. I mean, maybe I'm more confined to my family. Anything which is related to my family, it happens as expected. I feel really happy because those are the people who are connected to me, and anything related to them makes me happy or sad. My life is completely confined only there. So, like Revati said, helping somebody, giving an advice, of course, that also is good. But I'm so stuck in this particular world with kids, husband, family, mom, dad, siblings, that only these things now make me happy and sad.
Okay.
I used to teach, I mean, underprivileged kids, kids of my mate, domestic help. So it gives me inner pleasure, inner happiness that I've been able to teach them, and they got the job also. They are doing their graduation. So it feels, it gives happiness.
Okay. So let's see a few things. So we all define that our happiness comes from various sources, one activity or the other, or anywhere of the sense. There is a reason for you to be happy, which is not you, but it is an act or others, or it is an object or anything, but not to you. When we take the moon, and when we see the moon is shining, does the moon have light of its own?
No.
The moon is bright when it is a full moon day.
No.
From where is the?
It takes light from the sun. No?
Yeah. But suppose a person who doesn't know the science of how it is working comes and says that how beautiful the moon is, how bright the moon is. The glow is coming from the moon. So for such a person who does not have the knowledge of science and the practical understanding of what is making the moon shine, where is the shining coming from?
For
Moon.
him, shining coming from the moon.
From the moon, yeah. But for a person who knows that moon is not a source of light, sun is the source of light, and the moon is shining because of the reflection. So for such a person, what is the source of moon's brightness?
Definitely, you will say it is coming from the sun.
Yeah, so for that person, the person who knows the scientific facts, the source of brightness is coming from sun. But for a person who doesn't know the scientific facts and just believes what the person says, for such a person, the brightness is coming from, or the source
Moon.
of thing is coming from moon. We are
Yeah.
in the same kind of situation where when we see the arrangement of here, the understanding is one is scientifically ignorant, one is scientifically knowledgeable. The same thing comes here when we are spiritually ignorant. We do not understand that the source of happiness is we. We are that bliss body. When we talk about the yogic science, it defines our body as 5 sheets. which starts from the gross layer of Annamaya Kosha, then the pranic body, then the mind, then the intellectual sheath, and comes the bliss sheath. So we have the bliss sheath within us. And whatever that joy or bliss or happiness you experience comes always from that bliss sheath. But what happens? Why are we not able to access? So what we are trying to do with the spiritual path is to access that bliss sheath all the time. If you keep on accessing it all the time, you will be able to always be happy. But what comes in the middle? Our mind. So when you say that this is giving me happiness because your mind is calm at that time, you like it. Oh, the mind is now not making any kind of issues with you. So your mind is calm. Your intellect is not thinking, it is satisfied. So you get access directly to your bliss body. So the source of happiness is not the moon as the person thinks. So it is not that particular activity that is giving you happiness. It is just that you are experiencing your bliss at that point of time because your mind is calm at the time, or you are gaining access into that sheath of your body. It is like a curtain. Your curtain is obstructing. There is light everywhere. Happiness is there within you, but there is a curtain that stops that happiness from experience. So when everything is calm at any point of time, you feel, okay, I like this, I like this, I did this. Or when you do this, when you like this, your mind first remains quiet. It's not under agitation. So at that time, the curtain little bit moves off kind of thing. So it's just small air breezes comes, it just moves, and you will be able to see the light. That is the ray of happiness, where the source is you and not the act that you are doing. So what we are trying to understand here is a self-realized person, like the scientifically educated person. He knows that the source of light is the sun. Similarly, he knows that the source of happiness is the self, the Atman, which is within each and every one of us, the individual soul that is within each and every one of us. That is the source of happiness. That's why he relates back his happiness, or he relates that satisfied in the self. He is called a Sita Prajna. We have studied the first verse when he explains the Sita Prajna. Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanye atmana tushtaha Sita Prajnasya dochyate. There also he clearly says the same thing here, again the repetition. The person is satisfied with this within the self because he is spiritually educated, or he knows the truths. That's why he resorts in his self. And what did he say here? For such a person, tasya karyam na vidyate. There is nothing to be done. And what does he mean that there is nothing to be done? I'll explain it. I had few other slides to explain. So is this understanding clear? What is the source of happiness?
Within ourselves only.
That's why always, wherever you say, even in the Western sites, they say happiness is a choice. Happiness doesn't come from external acting. Happiness is a choice. You choose to be happy or not to be happy. So when we talk about the pleasure of psychology, what do? We identify ourselves with our body, mind, and intellect. And whenever the body or the mind feels sad, only with these three instruments, we never go beyond these three instruments to understand who we really are. So we just keep on fulfilling the desires. Desire subsides, innate joy comes, and peace is put forth. So the joy and pleasures we attribute, oh, because my mind is happy now. That's why you are able to experience. So why my mind got happy? Because it liked something, it got what it liked. So my mind is happy, so I am happy. But we never understand that mind is calm mind allows you to experience your true self. Because we never think beyond our body, mind, and intellect. That's the reason we cannot see anything beyond that. And again, as I said, when we keep on enjoying on the sensual pleasures, it again follows the law of marginal utility. And this law applies to anything that is impermanent. And why do we say when we indulge in the self, the bliss is permanent? Because the self, the nature of the self, as per the Sankhya philosophy, the self is eternal and permanent. Whereas when we see any object, any person, anything that is in the external world, it undergoes change. Anything that undergoes change cannot give you a constant happiness because it undergoes change. And at the same time, it's impermanent. Not even a single thing in this external world is the gross things, the inner thing, whatever it is, it's not permanent. So the things which are not permanent cannot give you permanent happiness. This is again the same example of comparing ourselves to the Atman, and mind is the mirror which reflects the light from the Atman and allows us to see the external world depending upon the state of the mind. So it's always the mind on which the shining of the light of Atman. When we say the light here, we can take it to the happiness or the bliss or the divinity that is within us to experience. So we can experience it clearly as long as the mirror is clear. So to keep the mirror clean, to keep our mind clean, is why we have to first follow the path of Karma Yoga. Why are we doing actions as a sadhana, or why are we doing actions in the spiritual path, or actions, transforming actions into a spiritual action, is because it makes, first thing it makes is to make your mind clear, or it makes your mind purified. Once the mind is purified, you will be able to experience things better. So it's difficult to find the happiness within oneself, but it's impossible to find the happiness elsewhere. This is not just only said in Bhagavad Gita, but said by many Western people and European people in different quotes. And again, when we talk about the Western kind of preachings and the Eastern kind of preachings, there is a lot of difference. The Western side, when we see, they always go with ethics. So what are ethics? Ethics are just nothing but a system of moral values. We might have studied in our schools the moral science. It tells you what is good, what is bad. Because of which we will understand what is good and what is right. Do you think ethics are everything? If you learn ethics, is it the end? Will you be able to be good when you master the ethics, or when you learn being ethical?
Not necessarily, because I mean, though I actually follow, or I have some ethics and I want to follow, maybe again there are circumstances which get influenced by the external factors as well. So at that time also, like, maybe, I mean, we might get disappointed based on the external factors. So just me following probably will not really give that happiness.
No, when you take personally also, suppose given that you have a perfect system to follow your ethics on your own. But what I am asking is, learning the ethics, is learning ethics equal to following the ethics? If you just learn ethics, will you be able to follow it? To follow or to live the ethical way, what do you need?
We need our inner commitment to actually follow.
Yeah, inner commitment, more than inner commitment, it is the sense control, or we can say we need a lot of mind control and sense control to follow the ethics, because the pull happens to the external world through our senses and our mind. So that's why if you see the Indian system, or not just the Indian system, the Eastern system, ethics are not discussed in detail anywhere. Lot of things which are discussed here are relating to the self-control and mind control, because it goes beyond ethics. The typical example is Duryodhana, when Lord Krishna goes to Duryodhana and asks, why are you engaging in this war when you know it is not good for you? And for the Kuru clan, he says this, Janani dharmam nachame pravrittihi, Janami papam nachame nivrittihi, Kenapi dehena hridistitena, Yata niyuktosi tata karomi. He says, I know what is right, but I am not able to practice it. I know what is wrong, and I am not able to keep away from it. I act as I am directed to by some mysterious power that is seated in my heart. So this mysterious power that he is referring to is nothing but flood of emotions that he is carrying from his childhood. He's not using his intellect for his emotional regulation. He is just following his instincts as and when they are coming. When he doesn't have the capability to control his instincts, there is no use of knowing what is good and what is bad, because you cannot go over your instincts. Then how can you act over your instincts? That's why even if you see here, there is nothing that is taught in Bhagavad Gita as this is good or as a moral science. Whatever you listen here or study here is all the cause and effect. And most of the things that Eastern philosophy focuses on is on the level of practice and not in the level of theory. That's why a lot of emphasis is given on self-control and mind control, because without these two things, we cannot do much knowing. For example, take a doctor. If a pulmonologist is an alcohol addict, can anyone help? Can anyone help such a doctor?
No, he has to help himself.
So what is the use of knowing he's a pulmonologist? He might be a world-renowned pulmonologist. Doesn't he know that alcohol consumption affects, or he might be a chain smoker, for example, because I said pulmonologist, cigarette smoking affects his lungs. He knows all the ill effects. He would have treated thousands of patients, and he would have advocated thousands and thousands of patients not to do that. But he might not be, if he is not in control of his weaknesses in the sense his sensual pullings, even though he knows it's not good for his health, if he is not able to control his senses, then no one can help. The same thing happens to most of us. That's why he is warning here, or the concept of that self and understanding rightly about the right ways of where our happiness comes and all comes in a sequence, because we need to understand things clearly. It's not about knowing that we can say that, I know everything. What is the use of knowing when we cannot put it into practice? Knowledge has to transform into wisdom. That is when we will see a change. Just knowing, after some days, it will go meaningless. They say buddhi karmanusarena. After some time, the knowledge fades away. You will come to a state, oh, what is there in learning? Nothing. Everything is the same. So this is one of the ways Saint Ram, he was also one saint. He was asked like how to practice or how to realize the self. So he told, because this is a part of karma, I thought I can bring this. This was he told, offer your work as worship. Karma yoga is all about offering your work as worship and seeing the result as Ishvara Prasada, Ishvara Arpanam and Ishvara Prasada. So he says offer work as worship, because most of the things what we do, when we are doing work, we remember God. When we are praying, so he says when you are doing work, always remember God. And when you are praying, he says to forget work. Most of us normally do the opposite. Like our mind, when you sit for prayers, all our thoughts come and try to disturb us. So when you do this, he says, you will be better. You will transform yourself better and better to realize yourself. So what is the difference between a worldly person and a spiritual person with respect to happiness? Worldly person, happiness lies in the multiplication of desires and satisfaction of desires. So he always goes in at the back of likes and dislikes, and also kshema, yoga and kshema. Whereas a spiritual person, happiness lies in transcending the desires. So he sees happiness from within, but he acts, and when he acts, he is transcending his desires. So how can we transcend our desires? By transforming all our activities into spiritual activities by acting in the spirit of karma yoga. So when he says tasya karyam na vidyate, he said that a person who is satisfied at all the three levels in his self, he says he doesn't have anything to do. And what does he mean that he doesn't have anything to do? That means he is like a no use person in this world? No. Because he has no desires, he doesn't contact the world, derive anything from the world. At the same time, he doesn't act, his actions are not directed towards acquiring something, or his actions are not directed with a fear of preserving something. His actions are there just because he has to act, he has to help people. When we say, do we have certain examples? They quote people like Ramana Maharshi and many spiritual people who have got enlightened. They are all the self-realized people who had lived and acted in this world, helping and serving the society with no personal motives. So the people who are such in a realized state still act, still live in the midst of people, but still the intentions or the attitude of their actions and their internal environment will be different from the normal person. So for a person centered in Atman, no action is necessary means he is technically, Vedantically, he is not acting because he has established himself in that bliss. So there is no more action needed for him for enlightenment, but they only watch the expression of enlightenment. With the self-realized nature, they contact the world. As I said, they do not act to derive something from the nature, and they do not act to preserve or in the fear of losing something if they do not act. So their happiness is always sustained, and they act in the mode of service, what they can do with this body. Because again, when we ask why do we have this physical body, it says that paropakaradam idam shariram. To be aligned to that verse, they act until this physical body is there for them. They act to serve the society without any personal motives.